Hello and welcome. My name is Christian Nacorda. I will be the instructor for this class, and this class, of course, being the head drawing class. Now, I also teach other classes at this school. One of them is the analytical figure drawing class. So the approach to this class will be very similar. So if you've taken this class, this shouldn't be anything new as far as the approach goes. Although the approach here is very analytical. We use perspective and simple shapes to understand and learn the figure. We will be doing the same thing here, but we will also transition into rendering. So we'll talk about shading and lighting. We'll even talk about hair. So lots to cover in a very short amount of time. So a little bit background about me. I went to school for animation. That's my background. Professionally, though, I am a sculptor. I worked at a company called Atomic Monkey for the better part of 10 years. Worked on a lot of very cool stuff, cool merchandise for video games, movies, and television. Here are a few things. A very, very small amount of what I worked on, but at least the coolest stuff. So I also worked on like The Simpsons, some Disney stuff, Family Guy, too much Simpsons, lots of Simpsons, but it's neither here nor there. But yes, I have also been teaching for 10 years. I started teaching back in 2005. Wow. So yeah, and I teach a lot of classes. I teach just observational drawing. There's beginner stuff to anatomy, obviously, life drawing, gesture sculpture, painting, Photoshop, design, a lot of stuff. So I am very well versed in drawing as well. I also cover painting a lot. That's something that we won't be covering in this class, unfortunately. So we just don't have the space to be covering color. So most of these are all very quick 2-hour to 3-hour paintings. These are all prima paintings. So most of them. Some of these are not. But yeah, like I said. So that's kind of my background. That's what I do. Just a quick look at my blog and quick things. So. But yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell, and that's about all you'll ever hear about me for the rest of the time being. So take a look at my face, because that's the last time you'll see it. Anyway, let's get into the class, basics of head construction. So that's what we're going over today. Like I said, we are going to take a look at just the general planes of the surface of the face and head. Obviously the neck will be included with everything. Starting next week, we're going to go very in depth with everything. So we'll take it down to the skull. The week after that, we'll go into muscle. The week after that, we'll work to the surface. We'll eventually talk about facial expressions. We'll talk about the differences between genders. Still some anatomy to go, but it'll be worth it for those of us. And we'll also, like I said, talk about facial expressions. So that'll be good. Anyway, before we get into everything, let's talk materials. So I obviously am doing everything in Photoshop right now, and I would also encourage you to do everything in Photoshop. However, I don't want to assume that everybody has access to this. So if you don't have Photoshop, that's fine. If you're not using Photoshop, might I recommend some very specific pencils to use. So I would prefer that you're using graphite, and graphite, the graphite pencils I would specifically ask you to use is a 2B or higher. So I don't want to see HB or H or anything below that. It's just too light, you know what I mean? So also, don't be afraid to draw big if you guys are using pencil and paper. I would prefer that you draw big just so we get more information. So no dainty, tiny drawings. Also, I would prefer that you not use charcoal. For this, I mean, let's say for the first few weeks, I would probably avoid using charcoal, and towards the end, if you want to, when we really get into value, you have my blessing. But until then, let's keep it with graphite. So for the first 4 weeks, no charcoal. What I am totally cool with is Prisma colors, or any colored pencils. That's actually, I would probably say, is mandatory, especially when we get into the week of muscles. just because we'll need to kind of break things down through color, and it would be difficult to do that all with one color because there's going to be a lot of information. So prismas and graphite is really, that's what we want, right? That's check marks and stars and hearts. That's the good stuff. So and avoid that for later, and then 2B. So yeah, that's it. As far as paper goes, it doesn't matter to me. The one thing I don't want you using is newsprint, just because you probably have graphite and newsprint are like oil and water sometimes. So I would prefer you to use like a nicer stock white paper. That would be good. Although if we do get to charcoal and you feel more comfortable with the newsprint when we're using charcoal, then be my guest. Then that's all good. So that's that. All right. So now, for those of us that are using Photoshop, some of you guys are probably very, very experienced with Photoshop. Some of you guys might not be. So I just want to go over brushes very quickly. I'll just show you the brushes that I use. This is not the brush that I use when I draw. Right? This is just my writing brush, or pencil, or whatever you want to call it. So as far as brushes go, I completely changed it. So typically speaking, when you open Photoshop, this is what happens. Let's just say you just got Photoshop and you open it, and this is your brush, right? That's pretty, but it's not what we need, right? There's no line weight. It's not expressive. It's like a coloring book line, right? So, and it's fuzzy. So the fuzzy is fine, but let's customize this a little bit more, and then we can be on our way to making nice, pretty drawings. So typically, I'll start off by hitting this button up here at the top next to the opacity. This is the transfer button. So by turning this on, this kind of activates your sensitivity in your pen for your tablet. So the harder I press, the darker my line is. The lighter I press, the lighter my line is. Right. So I get a gradation within my line, which is really nice. Also, I just really want to be as intuitive as possible, and I want to replicate traditional pencils. So that's one thing. The other thing that I'll turn on is shape dynamic. This is the last button here next to the airbrush. And what this does, this gives me line weight now. So the harder I press, the thicker my line is. The lighter I press, the thinner my line is. Right. So those two buttons coupled with each other, I get some like control. Lastly, what I'll do, I just opened up my brush editor, and this is just a personal preference. I do this because I like to replicate a paintbrush, but I'll thin it out and I'll give it a 45. This will also allow me to get even more dynamic paint. So think of this like a calligraphy pen, right? So I can go really thick to thin, but that's just me, that's what I like to do. So anyway, so yeah, that's basically my setup for everything. So again, if you guys have questions, this is stuff that we can cover at the Q&A. But pretty basic, like I said. If you guys are using Photoshop, I'm just assuming you guys probably have a really good understanding of the program. So yeah, like I said, today we will be covering the general basic dimensions, shapes, proportions, and planes of the head. So we're going right to the surface, like I said, and then next week we will kind of break down into the skull. So yeah, we'll take a look at this also. This we will be looking at this very specifically next week. But today we'll at least use this so we can get an idea of shape. So anyway, so we'll take a quick break, and when we return, we will start with the breakdown. All right, so let's get on with the head construction. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw this from three different perspectives. So we'll draw this from our orthographic views, from our front. So this will be an absolute front. We'll do this from a side or profile, and we will also do this from our perspective view. So this will be roughly a 3/4 with a slight tilt. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to start with spheres. Right? So just 3 spheres. Now what I'm not doing is I'm not worried about these things lining up specifically. Right? Take this for what it is. It's just going to be 3 angles. So that's one, and even this I'm not even too concerned. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this from the inside, we're going to work our way out, we're going to edit this so that way it fits exactly what we're drawing. Right, so front, side, and our 3/4. So what I'll do here on the 3/4 also is I'm going to slightly tilt up the chin. Right, so it'll be kind of an up-looking 3/4, just so this is just so we can apply all the stuff that we learn here. So the front and the side specifically we're going to be using just for learning the proportions, and then this will be the real application, if that makes any sense, and hopefully it will when we get to it. I also have this set up. This we'll take a look at in more in depth next week. So this is a cool skull that I have. I bought it off eBay. Yeah, this is a nice resin replica of something, so don't worry, it's not an actual person. That would be super creepy, and I don't think I'd feel comfortable with that. Anyway, but we'll look at this for proportion. So actually, while we're here, let's look at this now. Oops. So just taking a look at this, we should already realize that from side to side, the head, obviously, and this is an obvious thing, is much thinner. The distance between left and the right side is much thinner than the front to the back side of the skull. So those are things that we should take into account now before we get crazy. So also, these spheres that we drew, these original spheres, this is not the entire skull. I'm not using this as, you know, top of the head, bottom of the chin. No. What we're doing is we're just thinking about that as our overall cranial mass. So this is the skull, or the cranium, minus the mandible, minus our, even the zygomatic arch, minus the dental sphere. So that's what we're going to take into account. But for right now, let's kind of work with this, right? We're going to do something similar to this, and then do this, right? A side view. So what we should do first on our side view is elongate that skull slightly, right? So what I can do is I can either pull it back or pull it forward. What I'm going to do is pull it forward, right? So all I'm doing is just adding this to my original skull, or to my original sphere shape. So you'll notice that I'm also referring to this as a sphere and not a circle. So that's an important distinction to make right off the bat, right? A sphere is dimensional. It has obviously 3 dimensions, and a circle is 2-dimensional. It's just a flat line, a continuous line that connects. So, but that's not what we're doing. Spherical. So we're building shapes. So that's essentially it. So, oh, let's do this also. Might as well get this in. I'm going to slightly angle this just to add, again, my depth. Right, so I can take into account the front to back length of the skull, and then we'll edit more. So first thing that I'll do is I'm just going to divide this down the middle, right? So give it a center line. So for those of us that don't know, our center line is something that we use for symmetry, right? So what you'll notice here, and yes, I do that without holding the shift button because I'm awesome. I'm just kidding. We use this for symmetry, so we can, whatever we lay on either side, we're measuring from the center, right, visually, and that'll help us maintain that. So here it is on my side view. So top of the head, forehead, and then just down. Right. So what you'll notice is I'm bringing this down. Like I said, that original sphere is just a cranial mass. So really, it's up to you to decide. Today, I don't even really care how far down you go. One thing worth noting, though, the farther down we go, the more masculine it is. The closer to the skull we stop and drop a chin, the more childlike it's going to be. So at least take that into account. I don't go too far down because then it's going to be just ridiculously distorted. So so understand that. And my 3/4, like I said, it's going to be slightly like an upturned head. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this around the top. So think of it like a shoelace draping over a basketball, but at an angle. And then I'm just going to drop. So what we don't want to do is this, right? We don't want to wrap it too much because, again, that'll give us distortion. So what you'll also notice when I'm dropping this center line on my 3/4 view, I'm not going nearly as far down as I'm going for the other ones. So that another important distinction to make, right? So from here, like, we should determine the width over the chin, and this is really just something that's important on our front and our 3/4 view. So obviously the wider the chin goes, the more masculine. That's going to be another thing we'll talk about later. So and at this point now I'm just connecting. So for those of us that did take the regular analytical figure drawing, this should be a good review for you guys. But this is an even like more simplified version of what you might have taken in that class. So so anyway, side view, back, right, and then the 3/4, just closing up my shapes. All right, so 1, 2. So I like to think of this as the Spider-Man mask move. I might refer to that as my Spider-Man mask move, just because I'm just putting a mask over the whole thing. I'm going to make a lot of nerdy references, so just be aware of that already happening. So the next thing I'm looking for is my brow, right? So this is an average of where the eyebrows lay. I might be crossing right through them. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut the original sphere in half horizontally, right? And that's it. So I drew a flat straight line for this. I'm also going to do that right here, right? What we should understand is that this is a circle. Now, yes, I'm referring to this as a circle. So think of it like we're looking at a hula hoop from the exact side of this. So really what we're seeing visually is like a straight line, right? So I say straight line, that's not even close to straight anyway. So this, like I said, this is our application. Right, this is where we're going to see things happen. So what I'm going to use is a wrapping line. So I'm imagining a rubber band around like a ball, if that helps. So if it helps, you can also do this, like wrap the whole thing. I don't necessarily recommend that just because we're going to have too many lines here and that's going to get confusing. So think of it like that. Also, while I'm on the subject, while I'm doing this, just be aware that whatever wrapping line I use, I want to keep that consistent all the way down. Right, I don't want to do, the last thing I want to do is this like brow, eyes, nose, mouth, because we're going to get some major distortions, slight distortions when we do that. So again, something to be mindful of when we draw. So keep our wrapping lines consistent. So anyway, there's our brow line. Here's our chin. Keep this labeled so we don't forget. Next thing I'm looking for is the nose line. So the nose line, essentially, when I'm drawing the nose line, I'm not looking for the tip of the nose. So what I'm looking for is actually where does the nose come back and meet the face. So quickly, if I draw a profile view of the nose, so here's a nose, comes back, here's the top of the lip, mouth, bottom lip, chin. What I'm looking for is not this, I'm looking for this, right under your nose. So that's the line that I'm looking for. These proportions that we're going over right now, these are very general proportions. So just know we'll have to make adjustments if we use this observationally, right? But for now, again, these are just general proportions. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to find the halfway point, and generally speaking, the bottom of your nose is about halfway between your brow and your chin, right? So visually, I'm just finding the middle, and then there's my line. Side view, and then 3/4. Again, I'm keeping this consistent. So one thing that I want to do is whatever angle I set up here, and this would probably be a good idea for me to do, just so I can kind of visualize what I'm doing, for us to help us foresee the angle that we're drawing. I'm just going to draw this box, right? So whatever angle I cross the center line at the chin, I need to keep that consistent everywhere, right? So here's my nose line again, and this is about halfway between the brow and the nose. So now we have our chin, nose, brow. Next thing we're looking for is our hairline. So we should be really mindful to know, I'm calling it the hairline, but I don't want us to think that it's the actual hairline. That could be misleading. Really what I'm looking for when I say hairline is at what point does the head stop becoming a side plane and start becoming a top plane. I'm looking for that break in the curve, right? So Right. What you can remember is that generally speaking, the from your chin to your nose, nose to your brow, and your brow to your hairline is roughly around the same distance. Right. So I can go 1, 2, 3. And just find that. Again, so that's the break of the curve. You can try this right now for all of my at-home listeners. You can take your thumb and place it under your chin like this. Now take your index finger and place it under your nose. Right, so you kind of have this going. That's a terrible hand. So lock this and then move that up. Now move your thumb up to your nose. Where does your finger go? It should go up to your brow. Do that again. Put your brow to your brow, or your thumb to your brow. Your index finger should go to your hairline. So again, those are just general measurements. These can change. We can edit these things with design as well. But like I said, today's whole game is about proportion and just understanding that. I'm drawing this here even though it's too close. You know what? No, screw it. I'm not going to do it. Anyway, that's, again, general proportions, and we can edit this when we're designing, or we can shift things when we're using this observationally, which you guys will be doing for homework. So now we have like an egg shape, right? That's basically what we should be thinking about with the general shape of the head. When I look at this from the front view, right, and I know I keep constantly editing and changing things. When I'm looking at this from the front view, I'm seeing egg shape, right, upside down egg. But what we should also like really understand too is that from a top view as well, and going back to this, we're still seeing an egg shape. Right, so what we're noticing is that the back of the head, the cranial mass, is larger than it is at the front. So here's the nose, nasal cavity. So that's essential to understand, and we're going to really play into that actually right now. So what I'm looking for next is my temple, right, or just a general place for my temple. The temple is here, right? So this is, again, the break between the top plane and the side plane on the head. Right, so that's where the whole temple is going to top out. This is going to go around, down the side of the brow ridge, and this is going to bottom out at our nose line. So that's really what we're looking for right now. So remember, hairline, nose line. We have those two things established in our drawing already. So what I'm going to do, think of this like I'm taking a knife, right, and I'm subtracting. It's a terrible knife. I'm slicing off like a part of the side of the head. Alright, so what I'll do is I'm going to just quickly draw an ellipse. Also, when I'm doing this, what I'm aiming for is the tip of the eyebrow. I want to graze the tip of the eyebrow. I'll draw this here actually for you now. If I was to imagine, it goes up and then it comes back down. What I want to do is hit that. Right? If that helps to visualize what I'm aiming for. So again, I'm subtracting from the head. Remember, bigger at the back, smaller at the front, which means from a front view we should see both of the temples. Right, so I'll have it on here on one side, and I'm going to have it here again on the other side. Loosely measuring, trying to maintain my symmetry. Whoa, back up, homie. And now I can, from here, I can even I can even erase my excess, right? So again, like I said, we're reshaping this whole thing, and what we've done really right now is we've just created our first flat surface on this whole round thing, right? So a little bit darker. Here it is on my side view. Again, I'm trying to imagine where that eyebrow is, and I just want to hit like the very tip of it. So I'm just filling in this whole shape. And here it is on my 3/4. So essentially we're sculpting, pretty much. That helps us understand anything. So starting to take shape a little bit. Remember, we want to think of this as our first flat shape. If we did this properly, that brow ridge should cut right in half. right? So from here, I can even edit this curve and just make this straight along the temple to just reinforce the idea that that's flat. All right, so next what I'm going to do is I'm going to dissect this vertically now, right? I have a horizontal dissection, now I'm going to do a vertical through the temple. All right, so keep that pretty even. What I also want to do from the side and 3/4 view is I want to keep this as parallel as possible and consistent with my original center line. Otherwise, again, we're dealing with distortions. I think I might have added too much. Oh well, just keep going. So here it is. Even on the front view, I'm still going to do this. All right, so this line gives us a few more things. A little bit more information, a little bit more shape. All right, this gives us a stopping point for this jaw. Before, this was just kind of like arbitrarily connecting here, but now we can basically cut this off. All right, so now we're starting to get a little bit of shape here with our jawline. Also, since that's set up, here's one thing worth noting. Typically speaking, that nose line, the base of the nose, lines up with the base of the cranial mass. Right, so back here, this is where the spine is going to insert into the skull. Right, C1 and then C7, if you will. So that's a little helpful. Let's look at this for reference, just so we know. So base of the nose, if I'm coming back, right, brow, chin, hairline, and that's roughly lining up to that. How are we doing? We okay? Everybody good? Any questions? Okay, let's move forward. The next thing I'm going to do is drop in my ear. So what I want you to understand is that we're not going to do any kind of detail based anything right now. Everything we're going to do is just general shapes, right, and just general forms. I want us to understand this before we move forward and start jumping into features. You know, I think it's so tempting, right, to just start dropping in some detail. But you know, in order for us to be able to invent this stuff in the future, we need to understand this first. The good friend always told me, think of art like a bag of chips, right? When you're eating a bag of chips, right? I don't know why I decided I want to draw a bag of chips. What do you start with? Do you start with the chips, or do you start with the crumbs? Right? You always start with the chips. You start with the crumbs if you're a psychopath and you're weird, but you start with the chips, right? So we do the big stuff first, and then we work our way to the little stuff. So no detail. Anyway, so ear. You can try this now. Put your thumb under your earlobe right here. Right, and then put your index finger on top of your ear, and then lock that. Now roll that to the front of your face. Your thumb should line up with the bottom of your nose, and your index finger should line up with your brow. So again, this is a general shape for this. We're just going to, keep that consistent. So all I'm doing on this back bottom pizza slice of this temple is just dropping in a quick ear. If your ear looks like this, that's pretty cool. Either a Vulcan or an elf. Here's my ear. Alright, just back there. So pretty simple. We'll break this down too. Don't worry. We have a week just full of features, and that'll be one of the things that we're going to talk over or look over pretty extensively. Here it is on my 3/4. Nothing too fancy. Alright. So now we're starting to slightly take shape. So let's do some real damage to this right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this really graceful, elegant solution to breaking up the planes of the face, and I'm going to use the ear to start. So what I'm doing is I'm going to rhythm off of this ear, right, and then I'm going to make my way down to the bottom of the chin, or to the corner of the chin right here, right. And so just think of it like almost like an Iron Man mask, right. So just one big swooping line. So what we're doing is, technically speaking, and we're going to refine this next week,